Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Casually Die Hard. I'm Damien,
And I'm Ashley.
and we are sitting here today with George and Laura from the board game, The Game of Ham. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
You know what? It's a Tuesday night when we're recording. I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired, but I'm excited to get this interview underway. This is the first time that we've interviewed anybody that wasn't paranormal.
Yes.
So we're really excited to kind of learn about the independent board game industry and everything like that from you guys. But I know you had brought up a really good question while we were talking, getting ready for this, that you wanted to ask and everything. So I'll kick it over to you.
All right. Sounds good. So I'm always really interested in people's backgrounds and things like that. So I guess my first question would be, what did your experience with games look like growing up?
Well, for me, I've always been drawn to multiplayer games. Doesn't really matter the kind of multiplayer game. I would say when it came to video games, things like Super Smash, Mario Party, Mario Kart, all the classics. I loved first-person shooters, things like Call of Duty and Halo.
Yep.
I was pretty good at them. And when it came to board games, I really would play just about anything. Settlers of Catan, Monopoly were growing up. But as we got older, we started playing more and more diverse games. I have a cousin who's very engaged in the board game community. So he introduced me to a few games that he had gotten. And from there, I sort of got into games that I learned about through him and then eventually from other people. But it's always been multiplayer games. I've never really liked solo games. I find them not very stimulating. And for her, she just hates games.
Funny enough, I'm not a board game person. I don't get enjoyment out of it. I'm a really bad loser. I'm a terrible winner, so it's just a bad combo.
Monopoly related.
Sounds like.
Yeah, I think I blame my mom for this. So
that sounds like both of us.
Yeah, no, we're both very sore losers.
Yeah, and also sore winners, but we love playing.
It gets competitive in a comedic way between us because we don't target anybody else. We just aim to screw each other over the whole time. And then it just ends up with one of us getting really mad, but not like legitimately, just like, I'm really tired of you today, and now I just need 5 minutes to not see your face.
That is very relatable.
So, George, you said you were really good at Call of Duty and the first person shooters. Were you a programmer at one point, or
never a programmer? Just I enjoyed them. I mean, I don't know if you remember the Halo days. I don't know how much you remember the sniper, but for me, I was the guy in Blood Gulch who'd be able to get someone in a warthog across the map.
Okay, fair enough.
Humble.
One of those guys. But
listen. No, I'm a bragger when it comes down to gaming too. So don't shit on him too much. I
listen to this all day.
No, she does the same with me. I constantly brag about my glory days.
Yeah.
It's a shame they don't make new Halos. I really miss those days. But
yeah.
See, I'm the opposite. I've gone from the multiplayer games, video game wise, into solo gaming. Like I've been like, I don't like people. I'm not good at this anymore, and I need to not feel like shit for the rest of the day. So let me just sit down and cast spells in Hogwarts Legacy for 9 hours.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, I feel like that's partially a rite of passage with adulthood. Smaller friend circles, less game nights.
Yeah,
too busy.
That is true.
I mean, even for me to create new products for what we're doing here, because I'm trying to keep releasing increments over time, it's tough to get a group together because everyone's just so busy all the time.
Yeah. No, like even us, we're looking at trying to get a D&D group together, and it's like, okay, when does this schedule work? When do you know, and stuff, and trying to find friends as adults is hard.
Well, even when you have time, you're tired. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like today, like I came home and I'm like, I have an interview, I have dinner, and then I want to go to bed.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah.
So my question is Laura, you're not a gamer at all. How did you guys kind of come up with this concept to create Game of Ham?
That's all him.
Well, that was my project. So it all started back in the winter of 2017, where I just finished a contract position working for a bank for their internal media communications.
Okay.
You asked my background earlier. Communications would be my background, specifically the post-production editing of photo and video. And marketing. This is where I came from. Obviously, you could tell by the flamboyant nature of the booth when you guys came to it. But basically, my sister had gotten me a really terrible knockoff of Cards Against Humanity, which was a game I really enjoyed in college. And when I say terrible, I mean it was like 20 cards for $20. And it was all really terrible parodies of horror, like a guy with a jigsaw on his head. And it's like, in what context would that be good in any situation? And I said, we could do better than this. And it was a facetious statement, but I was obviously bored because I didn't have anything else to do. Because I just finished my contract position. I was between jobs. So I started working on it with her. She got bored pretty early on in it, within the first 30 minutes and an hour. And I guess I have a little bit of an obsessive nature. So I kept going with it. And around 300 cards, I realized I'm actually pretty good at this. And one thing led to another. And it was just sort of finding the things that annoy the crap out of me in Cards Against Humanity and games like it, and finding ways to playfully find solutions to those problems. In fact, you guys heard the whole pitch at the convention. I'm not sure if it was me or her or my sister that you guys talked to.
But I think it was your sister.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, one thing that I mentioned, the others don't as much, that took me 15 conventions to realize people gave a shit about was in Cards Against Humanity, when you pair the white cards and the black cards, the grammar didn't click. Sometimes that would kind of ruin it. So for me, I ended up playing with this concept in a way where you can, and this is sort of the nerding out portion of it, but I played around with the concept of how to create actions and nouns that worked interchangeably in sentence structures without it being weird.
That's awesome.
And I created a verbal algorithm. But then once you create a verbal algorithm, you also have to make it seem flawless. So the process to create the verbal algorithm and then actually make it work took 2 years. So the product actually got released at the end of 2019, which was perfect timing for 2020. We got one convention in. We were early on experimenting with how to market this. And we had a whole convention campaign of back-to-back conventions starting, I think it was the day COVID got declared a global shutdown was 1 week prior to the first convention of the back-to-back stream of different conventions.
Oh,
yeah.
So that was rough. And from there, party games weren't really a hit during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I like to say there's the official release, which is the end of 2019, the unofficial start of it, which was the end of 2021, which is when we got another chance, where at which point I was working full time doing marketing for a real estate company. And then in May of 2022, that's where the first conventions I started in August of 2021. So for those several months, I would do 1, 2, all of them kind of clumped together from the backlog of all the convention organizers pushing it back. But as of May 2022, that's when I like to say it officially took off, because that's where we're doing it full time and have been doing so since then.
I graduated graduate school in May. I skipped my graduation, actually. We just left, took a camper, and did a whole cross-country
I think we were in Utah at the time.
Oh, wow.
So we did the whole, I told them, it's like, give it 100%, try it. If it works, good for you. And if it didn't work out, at least you give it 100%. And
absolutely
full advantage. And here we are. It worked out. So
I love that support.
Well, as a listen, I guess you could say I like to roll the dice.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to just bet on yourself,
Oh, yeah.
And it's crazy because I have the game. I actually own the game. I picked it up, I think, at the end of 2019, like the official release.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I picked it up at a comic book store.
Was it Spider's Web?
No, so I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I live in Connecticut with her now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And so there was a comic book store there. I think this is where I picked it up. I don't know. The last 4 years have just run together.
Yeah.
But I picked it up there, and I think we played it like once or twice before COVID, and then I haven't really had a chance to break it back out again, because by the time COVID ended, her and I were together, and then I had to make a whole new group of friends.
Yeah.
So I do remember it though, which is crazy because I thought it was way longer before 2020. But wow, that is crazy.
You were on the beginning frontier on that.
Yeah, and I was on the ground floor.
You picked it up at a store because originally one of the things we did was trying to market to stores, and we did end up moving. I mean, I think we're in 30 states, something like 90 different stores from the efforts that were done there. But hands down, the thing that really made it take off has been conventions where people actually could look at the content.
Yeah. That's something I was actually going to ask about, was sort of the process of figuring out the best way to market it. I was a marketing major, so I'm always really interested in like, how do you get this in front of people when there are games that are sort of competitive with it, and like you just have to let people know like this is the better game that you want.
Right.
Well, like with all things, I would say it's trial and error. I mean, everyone will you in my life would say I'm an extrovert, but I consider myself more of an introvert in a lot of ways. And for me, when I first started the convention routine, I was behind the booth, and I was kind of doing the backlog stuff because I was not
you didn't want to talk to people.
Faces.
Yeah.
But
he was rolling posters.
I get it.
When we did that. And like I said, we sent it to a lot of stores, but it's good to hear that it actually worked, because I think we went to a few locations that actually picked up the game, and then a lot of them, they kind of put it in a back corner where no one would ever see them. So so that didn't really move as much to make this a full-time thing at that time, but it's good to hear that it was working.
We got you. So.
There you go.
Exactly.
Well, and because at that time I was regularly going into this comic book store, and I'm trying to remember where it was. It was right by the checkout counter because it's Comic Book West.
Yeah. Okay.
So they had like this big island in the middle of the store. York, but they have one in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
I remember exactly what store this is, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, they have 3 locations, right?
They had 3, they're down to 2.
Okay, then I know exactly what store this is. Yeah, I remember this
there
one.
You go.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad that you remember, because that's it. That was my comic book store for a while, and I saw it, I picked it up, and I'm like, interesting. So it's Cards Against Humanity, but a little bit more competitive. Let me check it out. And that's what hooked me.
And that's kind of how so one of the big criticisms when it comes to party games, and I don't know how in depth you are in the board game community, but there's kind of so you know, there's a stigma against party games for people who enjoy Euro games, because they're seen as stupid and people break them out all the time and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And I guess I could kind of agree. You play a lot of party games, they have some fun for a little while, but then the replay value quickly goes out.
Absolutely.
So the attempt at this game was to bridge light strategy with traditional party game to create something where you could still play a party game the way you'd want to, Cards Against Humanity style. Nothing prevents you, but this allows you to have a little bit more meat and potatoes on your plate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I was telling her
every week.
I was telling her kind of about it, because she hasn't played it with me yet. We got to break it out at somebody's house at some point.
We will.
But I was telling her, because the rule book gets a little daunting because there's 24 or 25 pages in it. But then you read through and it's like, oh, there's 6 different ways to play the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and then there's a quick start guide, and it's like, it took me a while to get over it, because I was like, I don't like reading rules. This is overwhelming. I hate it.
Yeah.
But you also have a video.
Yes, there are videos that get you started too. But that's actually one of the first things. So for me, when I do this, like I said, I go full throttle here. And I wanted to create something that had so many different ways to do it that you could never truly get bored. And if you read that rule book in depth, you'll see there's even ways of sort of randomizing what's in the rule book that you could play with at a time. So, but the typical person is not going to want to read that. So when we made the prototypes, there was just the original rule book. And that was actually the big edit to the prototype from the early play testing, because people reacted the same way you are. Which is why, of course, you have the first time player and Lazy Shit's quick start guide, which just gets it going real quick.
Listen, that's the best way to start it, and then you just get more and more in depth. You start figuring out, because all of the boards are double-sided, there's different start points, there's different strategies and stuff like that, which does appeal to my side of things, because I'm very much, I want to sit down and play a 19-hour sit-down game, and I just want to
Twilight Imperium.
No, we haven't played Twilight Imperium yet, but a buddy of mine has it, and I want to in the worst way.
No.
I bought it. I brought it out one day.
No.
I set it up. I spent all this time learning it, and no one else was into. You know how you have to play the game and sort of learn it as you go through.
Yep.
You can't really just watch the rules. That was perhaps the most miserable. And everyone who played it said, "Never again are we breaking this out." But I still want to, because it seems like it could be a lot of fun.
Right.
Well, and it doesn't help. There's a 45-minute intro video before you even learn how to play the game.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
And you have to watch it a few times, because the first time you're definitely missing some stuff.
Yes.
Which that's how I am with all rules. Like, I would rather just get into the game and start playing it and figuring it out from there. Yeah. Because when people start explaining rules to me, they don't exist anymore. It doesn't. Yeah.
And that's why we got the quick start guide. It gets things going.
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact pitch you heard at the convention, but I like to say we got the simple way to play, and then we got the D&D Master's wet dream here. That's how I describe it to people.
Love it.
Which is more my style. I'm a very big I'm a rules analyst.
Yeah.
Like, I am the rules meister normally.
Exactly.
Hopefully you can appreciate that rule book, because that is I like to tell people it's going to be the scariest rule book you've ever seen for a party game, and that I could say with certainty. You're never going to find a party game rule book as scary as that.
Well, and that was my intro. I was like, this is a party game. Why is there 24 pages? Why?
It's 24 opportunities.
Always the optimist. So, you come up with this because you were disillusioned with Cards Against Humanity in a little bit of like a knockoff of Cards Against Humanity, excuse me. Wanted to try to make a better version of it. What would you say to people that are hardcore Cards Against Humanity players to try your game? Like get like the elevator pitch version of that, because when you get a person that really loves Cards Against Humanity, that is all they play.
Yeah.
So obviously your game is very tonally similar, but the strategy is different. So what makes your game, do you believe, better than Cards Against Humanity?
Sure. Well, I mean, I do this every weekend, so I actually have a militarized pitch at this point. I mean, I could tell right off the bat if people are into this just by asking 3 questions. Do you like dark humor? Do you know Cards Against Humanity? Are you a fan? And if the answer to the first 2 is yes, you're probably in the right place. And if you play party games and the answer is no for the third, you're still in the right place. Because this game is describable as Cards Against Humanity, meets the board game Sorry, cranked a few notches darker, and aims to improve the mechanics and replayability of that kind of game, which annoyed the crap out of people.
Yeah.
And that would be the really expedited thing. And then I could go into the whole big spiel. I mean, some of the defining characteristics, since I think that's your question here.
Yeah, a little bit more, yeah.
From the scary Wet Master, Dungeon and Dragon Master's Wet Dream rulebook, I like to start with just the improvements to the concept of Cards Against Humanity. The first one being the grammar of every question and answer card to go together. And what this means is, aside from being an annoying thing in the game, it actually serves a practical purpose. It means now you'll have less dead cards in your hand, meaning it's easier to play them. And what that also means, I don't know how in-depth you got in that rule book, but there's our version of Rando. I don't know if you're familiar with Rando, the random white card to the black card in Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah.
Our version of that is Ha, which is the hate avatar, because it's the game of hating all mankind. I don't know if you saw that on the cover. But there you go. And what that means is that when you throw in the optional drinking, smoking, and punishing your friend rules, it's unofficially the only party game you can play with yourself. And who doesn't want to do that? And when it comes to the drinking and smoking, we even have people covered, because I don't know if you guys play a lot of party games where there's a lot of drinking and smoking, but it could get weird when you have some people in the group who don't want to do it, and then people getting smashed with the people who aren't getting smashed, and they're having totally different experiences. Right. So the way to combat that, I don't know how in depth you got in that rule book once again, but going back to that, one of the things would be just doing lemon shots. So those people are going to get hydrated while you get messed up. Everyone's going to suffer that night. Just the next morning, it's different for everybody. And to go back to the Cards Against Humanity part, because we're digressing a little here, there's also little descriptions on the bottom of every card that was actually purposely designed for people not to notice. And the reason for it is because some people actually want to explain to grandma what bukkake is. And I tell them, we're not going to take that away from you. But I encourage people to read it. We call it the flavor text for a reason. And that's because more often than not, it's actually just the best part of the card. And if you read the bottom, you know exactly what I mean. Yes. And another thing, and actually funny thing enough, when it comes to the grammar thing, it took 15 conventions to realize anyone else gave a shit about that. That was just my own neuroses.
Yeah.
Now it's the first thing I mention when I talk to people.
I always like to bring up what I think makes it better than Cards Against Humanity are the ability cards that come with the game.
Oh,
the main thing is, you play a really funny card and you're super confident you're going to win this. Yeah. And then the judge has the audacity to pick someone else's card, and you're like, the level of absolute disrespect right now, right? It's the worst. Now we have an ability card that allows you to force the judge to pick a new winner. So tables have turned, So I like to throw that in there.
As well as abilities that allow you to cycle cards in your hand, which from the get-go, you don't need to cycle as much as you did in Cards Against Humanity when you have the dead cards, because like I said, grammar flows, which means hate avatars in boss mode, which is why you could unofficially play with yourself. You could also play twice in a round, and you could also make friends sit out a round. But then, I don't know if you guys are also Magic the Gathering fans. There was some inspiration. Okay, well, there you go. There's a stack rule there as well. And on the back of each one of the question cards, the gray cards, which is the equivalent of the black cards in Cards Against Humanity, there are H, A, and M, which allows you to start countering, so you could ham someone's ham as well. So it could get to be a very hammy situation. And the last feature, before we get into the things that are totally different than Cards Against Humanity, that improves it, one thing in Cards Against Humanity that for us, and it seems a lot of people experience the same thing, was when the write-in cards would come, people would sort of pass on them because no one's creative. They just aren't. So what our version of it, we threw a couple of them in because obviously we still want to give that option. But we threw in a new type of write-in card where basically it's a pre-structured prompt like blank can always cheer up write-in. You choose write-in and there's 6 suggestions. I don't know if you guys have seen those cards when you played.
It's been a while. I can't say that I remember too much about the write-in cards.
You can make it really personal by adding people you play with.
Oh, in fact, that's suggested.
Target the people you play with, which makes it
fair enough.
So it breaks that extra wall.
Yeah. No, I think that's like a really good way to do it, because when you're able to kind of give people a prompt, it allows their brain to work a little bit more. Like instead of just giving them a blank white card, hey, this is it. When you're able to like lead them to water kind of thing, it makes them a little bit more creative.
And the criteria for creating all the content was pretend the person you're talking to is the simplest person on the planet and explain it to them. And that's why even the ability cards have the explanation of when and how to use them on the bottom of each card, just like the flavor text.
That's awesome.
And that was actually the next level, because normally when I give my pitch at conventions, first there's the intro to see if people are into it, the 3 questions. Then there's the whole breakdown of the improvements on Cards Against Humanity, because let's get that elephant out of the room. And then there's the next part, which is the evolution to the concept, which is where the board comes in, which is a double-sided modular game board. And for the non-gamers who don't know what modular is, for your listeners, that would be where you can mix and match the tiles. So it's a different experience every time. And with that rule book, there's ways to accelerate and decelerate the game so it could move quicker or slower. And of course, the last selling point for any board gamer, which is actually something I mention at conventions a lot, is the fact that it's a 16-player board game. Most board games are 4 to 5, for those who don't know. We all tap out at 8. And I like to tell people at conventions, we double tap there. So Of course, when it comes to that board game, there's an actual definitive end goal, which was another problem Cards Against Humanity had, where people would sort of just keep going until they either A, pass out, or B, just walk from the table because they get bored.
Yeah.
But you actually have a way of engaging with people. And this is something that's a little less paid attention to, but important to note. It was designed for parties. So it's designed for people to be jumping in and out at any given point. And for perspective, someone could actually be right at the finish line about to win. Someone could jump in and actually still win the game. In fact, we had one influencer who did exactly that. Spent the whole
game
and still won when the person was 2 spots from winning.
That's so cool. It seems like every single part of this game was so well thought out. It's just very impressive to me.
Yeah, no, I agree, because like as I was like prepping for this interview and stuff like that, I was watching some gameplay of it and stuff. And one of my favorite YouTubers, Jared Dines, I'm a metalhead, and he and his co-host Austin Dickey were playing it on one of their shows at like 4 years ago when it first came out. I was like, oh, okay, so it was about that long ago. And I was laughing with them because it's so nice to be like, I have a very dark sense of humor. We actually just went and saw the stand-up comedian Anthony Jeselnik a few weeks ago, and he's super dark. I love the dark humor, and so like it appeals to me. But when you get into that kind of stuff, like how do you guys set yourself up to not, for lack of a better term, get canceled?
By simply not caring.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are outspoken that have, that complains the same with Amazon reviews, right? A lot of people that write reviews are the ones that think this sucks. So obviously that comes with the whole territory of creating a game like this, and then being, especially in the political climate that we currently have, it's a very sensitive topic. But a lot of people like it, it gives them a kind of an escape from reality, and that just be whoever they want to be in their safe circle that they are, and just have fun. And I think that shouldn't be taking away from all the political stressors and all the things that going on, and just take away your mind off of that and just do whatever you want to do.
I mean, to some level, there's a little bit of nihilism when it comes to this game. Nothing truly matters. And I would say, to some level, the success of the game has been that pushback, because just as there is cancel culture, there's a push and pull there. And when you go too far with cancel, eventually there's a push back. But when you push back too much, then the cancel gets a little further. And it's that push and pull, because that's where boundaries come in. And where to go with that is a tightrope. When it came to the first game, which is what you picked up, we actually ended up replacing one card in there simply because it got too much flashback. It wasn't even a good card. And
so you have the card.
Yeah, you actually have the card that no longer.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll have to wait till we're done recording, so that way you guys don't get in trouble.
You will know.
And it's interesting because when it comes to the card, the thing that gets people all up in arms isn't even the subject matter of the card. Which is what's funny about it. But that's what it comes down to. Certain, I guess you could say, and I'll use the word trigger words, could really cause problems. But that's kind of where things evolved with the game too, because most of our fans who purchased the game have said go darker, for example. So how do you meet that request while not crossing lines? And I guess to go back to the origins of the development of the product, so a little more backstory, because I sort of gave a very sped up version of it, but it's relevant to the concept here now, is in creating it, I wanted to push the limits in every way that I could. It was a personal challenge thing for me as I was developing it. So in playtesting alone, people were saying, go darker, go darker, go darker. I heard it over and over and over again, which, mind you, the stuff you're looking at right now was all in existence. So this was not this was not considered dark enough, the stuff that is in the adult set now at what's settled. And this led to our system of how we go about our expansions. And our expansions we call seasonings. We call the base game the main course. We made a little appetizer, which is a standalone expansion, and then the seasonings. And the seasonings take a different approach than Cards Against Humanity, in the sense that Cards Against Humanity might have loose themes when it comes to their expansions here and there, but each one of them in ours actually takes on a very distinct, unique tone. So the origin of the first, we call them seasonings, although they weren't known as seasonings back then, was the creation of a no filter, no hold back, go as dark as possible, straight out of the dark web, and just make the most messed up stuff. And someone said, you nailed it. And this is stuff I'm not even going to share. It's probably never even going to get published. Because, and that's the thing. I look at this from an artist perspective. I went to a fine arts college, so I guess you could say that has some influence in my way of thinking. But art pushes boundaries, and I find artists to be pretentious in a lot of ways, so I don't really identify as an artist, so it just kind of goes that way. But when it came to creating this expansion, I like to compare it. I don't know if you heard the story about the making of The Dark Knight, how Heath Ledger prepared for the role by locking himself. It's pretty well known. That's how I would compare this first thing, where I went on a roll making the darkest, most messed up, graphically violent, horrible, pushing the limits, specifically looking for the things that's going to get people upset and creating it. And after a few weeks of this, I created a large amount of content, and then I felt really dirty. So I had to do naturally the opposite, which is where the first official released expansion came, which was Rose-Colored Glasses, which is I like to describe it as everything happy-go-lucky in card form. Which,
like the Hallmark movies,
yeah, you know, stuff like
love it.
A Rescue Puppy's Love, which, and this is where I think of it from an artist perspective, it's all about context, which most people don't recognize, which is why I specifically pointed out to them in conventions, because most people don't think like this. But you throw something like A Rescue Puppy's Love to one of the adult set prompts, like what could O.J. Simpson always masturbate to? You see,
time with the kid.
That's another one in there. So that was the first one. And I guess you could say a lot of the cards kind of reflect different aspects. I like to compare creating these different expansions to like method acting, kind of. I have an interest in psychology, so I like to put myself in different headspaces in order to create the content. So after Rose-Colored Glasses came out, I wanted to come up with something a concept that was broad but also fun, which is where one of the other first release expansions, because we released our first batch of expansions in November of 2022, and we launched Rose-Colored Glasses, which is the one we just talked about. The next one, which was what I'm going to talk about too, which is X Ways to Say I Love You, which specifically answers that prompt, how to say I love you to that special someone. And we love a lot of bait and switch here. So it's not just the super happy-go-lucky stuff. I like to say it could be sweet like a breakfast in bed or sour like a black eye, to put it simply. But to sort of elaborate on that, let me put it this way. It gets very weird, abstract, and people ask themselves, who the hell thinks of this? In fact, well, you could share
we
that
actually
story.
had someone come to us this year at New York Comic Con. It's like, I bought this game a year ago, and now I have a kid because of you guys. And I was that was never intended to, give any ideas, and I'm not trying to be
Oh, you find all kind. You can't make up the stuff you find at conventions. And that was, I think, that's the only time I've ever been caught off guard. But I specifically memorized his face because I need, for my own sake, to know which card it was that did it.
Yeah.
Because it does get strange. And I mean, yeah. So it kind of became a journey. And to go back to the question from earlier. So people said go darker, but obviously you do have to have some, I like to say, ethics and morals when it comes to what's okay and what's not okay, because we achieved our goal. We hit every aspect in an unfiltered way. And then I like to say from the raw cut, we dialed it back 3 notches and came out with 2 con exclusives, and we made them con exclusives, which is our way of sort of regulating who buys them. making sure only the people who really want to get it. In fact, we make it more expensive and they have to sign a waiver or we won't sell it to them. And currently, it's not even mentioned on our website, the 2 expansions. One is Dark and Messed Up, stemming from a derivative of that the first fucked up one, but only the safer side of them, which is still plenty dark, which is why I've been getting feedback from people of whether or not it hit the mark or it should go darker. Because right now, and it's a little nod, the original cut to that really dark fucked up stuff was called Into the Abyss. So we dialed it back to Gazing at the Abyss, and then we may or may not experiment with Reaching into the Abyss. We'll see where things go.
She says no immediately.
So yeah, it probably won't exist. But just a note, it was made in testing. And then the other one, which is a more playful, touching on the stuff that will get us canceled, it's called That's Offensive. Because
self-explanatory,
which has now been the bestseller of every one of the expansions.
It's insane. It's insane. They're like $30, sign me up. Oh, I need to waiver. Otherwise, and it's the waiver states like this is actual like a contract. You cannot share this content online. You have to get consent from other players. We don't take zero responsibility for hurt feelings.
Wow.
You know, things like you have to sign this in order to acknowledge and consent to this purchase and what it means to own this copy, right? You can't sell it. If you want to get rid of it, don't give it to Goodwill. You got to burn it. Like nobody besides you who spends the money on it can have it.
Yeah.
Don't post online.
Like, I'll take it. And it's been flying off the shelves, which was I did not anticipate it. So
had we had the money, had we had the money at Rhode Island Comic Con, we would have bought it. Yeah. Because this is the first I had ever seen the game outside of that comic book store. I had never seen it anywhere else. And all of a sudden, big booth, you guys are all marketing and stuff. And I'm like, how the hell did this happen?
Yeah, I think I pointed and I was like, oh, you have that game.
Yeah.
We even had the floating ham in space because fuck, why not?
Yeah. Listen, if you have those cards and you're not going to sell them, I will take them.
It sounds like they're selling more than they can handle.
Oh no! I mean the
ones
Into the Abyss cards. I will take them.
This is why every time someone buys the expansion, I make a special note to mention this exactly what I said here, which is in the uncut version there were no filters, and then in these cut versions they're still plenty dark and fucked up. I mean, I think we could talk freely here with one of the cards.
No,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, we won't talk about it then. Well, well,
they're gonna get canceled. We're gonna cancel.
hold on. Here's how we absolve ourselves. The opinions of Game of Ham do not reflect Casually Die Hard or Damien and Ashley. Now you can
also,
say
it's not necessarily opinions; it's just something they came up with.
Yeah, it's just an idea. You can't cancel an idea.
Well, to give you an idea, when it comes to the That's Offensive set, we were at New York Comic Con, which is where we started bringing up. We give one sample card to people who are genuinely interested, because once again, there's plenty of people who you get these posts online. We found someone else to cancel, and we're like, okay, well. Whatever. You don't do this and don't expect it.
Yeah.
But we hands down get plenty of positive feedback. But the card that I like to bring up because we were at New York is, and then the flavor text for that one is Make That Tower Explode. So, and that I like to tell people is on the safer side of things. The other one I've sort of been pitching now, and this is where we learn how to describe it in a more fair way. But I think the best way to describe it is for people who grew up playing Sims and always tortured the characters. That's what that other one is
That's
for.
me. Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea of the other one.
Yeah.
But for those, we mitigate how many go out. All the others add different flavors. I mean, I could give you, if you want, I could tell you a quick idea of the different ones.
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'll do them in order as they came out. Rose-colored glasses we went through. X Ways to Say I Love You came out. Into the Heart of Emotions, and this is where we learn from the people's feedback. That was an experimental set where every card's goal was to capture a strong emotion across the spectrum of emotion.
Okay.
And that stemmed from, and this was a more experimental thing in testing. I wasn't sure if I wanted to release it or not, but a lot of people really loved it, so I did it. And this stemmed from my own personal experience with the decision to stop graduate school in order to pursue this game. because I found that the quality of my creativity was going down as I went to a business school. And I was like, well, I could choose to continue down this road or once again roll the dice. And there's this dogma about you got to go to school, you got to go to higher education, you got to go to graduate school. Meanwhile, trade schools are actually making more money than a lot of graduates. But anyway, I digress. Little thing, healthcare.
You're not wrong.
Anyway,
yeah.
So when it comes to that, originally it was funneled from the stress, depression, and anxiety that derived there, and I was like, there's something to the power of emotion, and I hit across the board with depression being on the stronger side of things at the time. And that's actually where we learned from the people going to conventions. This was the emotion that made that one fly a lot higher than any other emotion.
Which made us make a depression pack, which
yes.
is
pretty
good bestseller.
Which leads to the next batch of 3 expansions, which I should also mention one other one that released at the time was the Pocket Ham, which was our response to Cards Against Humanity. It's our when in doubt, whip it out guy. It's meant for planes, trains, automobiles, and it's designed to fit in your pocket. So that's how I pitch at conventions. So people at conventions clearly liked Into the Heart of Emotions for the depression. So what better way to go than the depression pack? So people also wanted pop culture, but we don't like pop culture. So we had our fun twist of dancing the line with pop culture, but in a way it won't get dated or has iconic things that years from now, as long as you explain it, it'll still have value. Like, for example, singing R. Kelly's I Admit It at the school daycare. So with real lyrics from his song, which he did it to himself, I don't need to do any more on my part. And the one that I like to think of in terms of humor as a counterpart to X Ways to Say I Love You in the behind the scenes of it, it was actually a parallel where a lot of them overlapped, would be, yup, that'll kill you. With things that'll kill you literally, or the fun part, emotionally. And I ran wild with. So those 3 came out at the same time. And then I wanted to also push my limits because we've been going to conventions, and conventions are all about superheroes and Disney, and all this stuff. But I also hate selling out. So fuck that. I want to do it my own way. So we came out with the 2 con exclusives at the same time as the next 2, which came out, which were our semi-thematic packs, which would be fairy tale endings, where everything touches on fairy tale tropes, which is kind of a thing that goes for Disney fans a little bit, but also I kind of lean more into just overall like Dungeons and Dragons kind of experience on the lighter side, but also tropes like a child bride. So it's not all that sweet and that sweet. It's got a little sour in there, but it's on the sweeter side of expansions. And then my 2 favorite expansions would be Rose-Colored Glasses and this other one, which is the Superhero Pack. And the reason I like the Superhero Pack is because in true bait and switch kind of concept here, it's not things that are literal superpowers, but things that should be a superpower, which gives us a lot of wiggle room with stuff like reading above an 8th grade level, which is, fun fact, actually the U.S. average, and that is not made up. And now that I've traveled the country, I can confirm that and oral hygiene is a real problem even in today's age. So
sure
not just oral hygiene. Body odor. You guys work Comic-Cons because we went, like I said, we went to Rhode Island Comic-Con. She was Lara Croft and I was Nathan Drake from Uncharted. And so we're dressed up and I looked at her and I was like, you're in a tank top, triple up. I don't care. And she's like, I'm ahead of you. And then we walk in and I'm like, it smells like nerds. Like
I'm glad you bring that up because we actually had 2 experiences with that. Aside from just smelling it all the time, which yes, you go, it comes with the territory. We're in a convention in Columbus called Origins. It's a gaming convention. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No,
but
I haven't.
They actually had signs up, apparently in the past, saying personal hygiene's important. Shower before you come to the convention. They didn't do that this year. The year we went. Sorry, they didn't do that the year we went, but apparently they used to do that.
But maybe it got better. People are like, we really need to start showering.
I think there needs to be like in I think it's Monty Python, the shame for anybody that does not wear deodorant.
Some people are all natural.
Listen,
No.
As a nerd,
it is what it is.
As a nerd, a public service announcement. Please, for the love of God, wear deodorant.
I do know that.
It's just not strong enough for some people.
But I know.
And the second story was so we worked a convention in Indianapolis called Indie PopCon, and the organizer wanted us to create a custom convention exclusive card. So I was like, it has to be convention related. So of course the card was naturally really bad body odor because
yes.
What else screams conventions? So
that's true.
Tell me that sold really well.
Oh, people just got it for free for playing the game.
There we go.
That wasn't for sale. That was just for people to get.
Yeah, like a promotional card, really.
Love it.
I was gonna say you can start Funko popping cards now. You can start doing convention exclusives and stuff like that.
That's the thing. And this is a little bit more of a backstory from the origins of this. I already stated I have a little bit of an obsessive personality when it comes to creating content.
Yeah.
So in the release of the adult set, which is what you picked up, 2,000 cards were made to get it distilled down to what you got. But that wasn't where it stopped. At this point, I'm still generating cards. Obviously, it's much slower when you're doing shows every freaking weekend.
Yeah.
We've been 34. We're going to be ending the year with 35 shows.
Wow.
So for perspective, that's why when I say it's militarized, it really is militarized.
You gotta.
Yeah.
I've heard everything and then some at conventions, but you're still going to hear those random things like
furry.
The one that sticks with me. I'll just share one story from a convention because
we're all about stories.
Oh yeah.
Would be when we were in Chicago and we were selling to a furry who talked about how they would go to orgies, a furry orgy every Friday, but they stopped doing that because everyone would go in costume and he was afraid of running into his sister.
No!
Oh my God. You know what? The awareness was there and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the awareness, but also, why do you know your sister's a furry?
Also, it's like unprovoked conversation starter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, what led to this?
Or just mid-pitch and having someone say, hold on a second, because they saw some cosplay. I didn't know at the time what the cosplay was. I had seen the cosplay. It's the vampire lady from Resident Evil.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
which has become a dominatrix icon, I guess. I was not in the know prior to this. And mid-pitch, he says, hold on a second, and asks this lady to stomp on him. So, and then asks me to photograph him. And of course, fuck, why not? Sure, I'm here for you. So this guy just lays down like
in front of Boo.
Yeah, like Titanic, paint me like one of your French girls, legs spread apart and everything, and specifically request for her to stomp with her high heels on his groin and has me photograph him. So
and he didn't like it, so he had to start to redo the whole
thing. Do it again. Oh my gosh. No.
Smile.
I was gonna say smile, grimace, complaint. I don't. What do you do?
Right there.
Yeah.
Like that is insane.
That is crazy.
To go back to the point, because now we digress with con stories, which I could go on and on for a little while. Because we don't do small conventions. If it's not at least 10,000, it's not worth our time.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
So to go back to the point, at this point, there's 8,000 cards now made.
Oh, wow.
Through a rigorous process, because I'll say it straight, not every card's going to be a winner. You come up with your brainchild, not everything's good, but it comes down to the distilling process, which I like to compare to, I don't know if you're familiar with Cidre de Glace from Montreal. It's a type of dessert wine. It's basically apple cider that turned into a wine by distilling it down. And the process works by you get a giant vat of cider, hard apple cider, and let it freeze, and alcohol doesn't freeze. So they remove the ice over and over and over again. And eventually you have the final product, which is the dessert wine. And that's how I like to describe the creation process.
Yeah,
that's a really good way to describe it.
I come in where I proofread all the cards and say, this is trash and this is okay. And then
because that's the catch-22. You don't make cards thinking they're garbage.
Right.
That's not to say they are garbage. They're just not where it probably should be.
Yeah.
So from there, it enters a distilling process where eventually then you have to balance it. And actually that leads to something else too, which was going to be the point with, we just finalized yesterday one of the new expansions for next year, because I'm trying to consistently release expansions in blocks of 3 now, because 3 is just a good number. So based on feedback from people this year, because Depression Pack was the bestseller until the con exclusives came out, and then That's Offensive specifically wiped the board with it. Depression Pack sold so well that next year, one of the first expansions is going to be called the Anxiety Pack, because what pairs better with depression than
anxiety?
Right.
Listen, it's my life.
Well, there you go. You'd be surprised. It doesn't matter where in the country it is. People just identify, which might be a statement about the kind of post-industrial world we live in. But hey, that's
probably.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
A whole different thing. But if you don't laugh, you cry. And of course, there's a little catharsis in just pure undiluted depression.
Yes.
And That'll Kill You sold really well. So we're going to go with volume 2 for that, because we do it in installments.
Okay.
Because I like to pitch it to people. We got the main course, and then we let you season that pork to your liking, because what's better? Who likes unseasoned pork? It also taps into the concept of games like Fortnite and all these other games where you do these different packs and different skins, so it's a different experience. So here, you're the chef in the kitchen, is what I like to tell people, and you get to create exactly your masterpiece, chef's kiss. Plus, every holiday season, you say you brought home the ham, which actually did get us sales for Thanksgiving. But going back to the point, then the third expansion that's coming out, because I feel like you got to come up with new journeys. I like to think of each flavor as a journey, is going to be Good Parenting, which of course is going to appeal to millennial parents. There's some genuinely nice cards. It's a little bit of a sweetness in there, but then you just got a lot of the strong emotional stuff involved with parenting. And also the things that are going to be unpacked at 40 in a therapy session. And that's where we have a lot of fun there. And then, of course, a vision for this is to eventually create a roadmap. I like puzzles. I like chess. I like a lot of these cerebral kind of ways of thinking. So personal challenge that's currently being worked on in the concept is to create a brand that doesn't just stick to party game, but transcends into other genres of games, but links together in a way where everything is interchangeable. So it's going to be a giant puzzle piece where you could get everything individually, and then eventually through similar linkages within one extension of each other, you could actually bridge everything together with something like the adult set being a baseline that everything could interchange.
That's so cool.
So one of the first installments for that, and this is one that I've been mentioning at conventions now, because I want because I want to gauge interest, and so far people are loving the concept, is the Punishing Board, which is going to be leaning more into the light strategy component. It ditches the question and answer cards completely.
And for someone who hates board games, it's so beyond infuriating, this game. Like if you want to flip the table, it's homicidal rage that comes out.
Oh, sounds like something we're into.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
for a reason. It's designed to feel like you're in a ring in hell, and it taps into gambler psychology. I don't know if you're too familiar with the concept of how, with a gambler, the way over time casinos changed, where it was you feel like you're going to win, and it becomes a roller coaster over time versus there's sort of a graph. I don't know if that. Anyway, I digress.
I'm following you.
But the point here is it's designed to seem very simple, because it starts very similarly in concept to how the adult set board works. The ability cards are totally different, though. So it's going to be essentially the concept is it seems easy. You start, you finish. It should be easy peasy. In fact, if no one fucked you over, it could be done in 15, 20 minutes. But the thing is, because of your friends, it becomes a misleading thing where you basically feel like you're going to win over and over and over again, but because of your friends, you get fucked over and over and over again. So as someone described it at the convention, it's essentially edging it over and over and over and never getting
it has the ability cards allow you to shift the board tiles apart, which means you get trapped on one part and you have to shift the board back in order to advance forward. So you're basically isolated on this board tile until you get to advance. There's also other cards that make you move backwards and hit a certain spot before you can advance forward. So, you're like advancing and you're like, oh, you have to all the way to this spot in order to...
Creating primary and secondary objectives prior to the goal spot.
Yeah.
Then there's actual cards that move you backward which on top of everything else could be very frustrating. And then there's counter cards, which on their own work the way the ham mechanic worked in the main game. But because this is the first installment that'll eventually connect into the base game itself, it will integrate with the colored cards, and the colored cards will interact with the question and answers, and it could be mixed and matched. And there's going to be a bunch of ways to do it, because that's kind of how we do it here. But that's the baseline concept, and it's going to rely on dice rolls rather than question card movement, which there's going to be ways of mixing those together in several ways, which you're going to have like everything else, an A, B, C, D, E, F, G kind of thing going on.
That sounds amazing.
This sounds like 5-tier chess.
Yeah,
that is exactly how I think about it.
Yeah, no, that sounds incredible.
And for me, it's always a personal challenge. I mean, the way my mind works is it works 1,000 miles per hour thinking of new concepts.
He never stops talking.
But
me neither.
Well, and then the thing is how to create something that no one else has done. And frankly, I feel, and this is something I've noticed in the board game community, a lot of games just take other concepts and regurgitate them with maybe one minor change.
Yeah.
Right.
And to some level, that's inevitable. You can't really avoid it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there have to be those mavericks who come up with unique concepts and unique ways of bringing new life to an old concept, and eventually create something new altogether. I mean, to use an example in movies, Star Wars, apparently a lot of the actual stuff from the original Star Wars movies was just regurgitated settings and whatnot from George Lucas's passion, which was Flash Gordon, which was stuff, that kind of concept. But everyone would agree Star Wars is a truly unique masterpiece for its time.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think it's so interesting to see someone doing something so different, especially because now I feel like board games are sort of having this upkick. I think after COVID, people really decided that gathering was important and gathering in person was important. And I think that I've seen a huge uptick in people interested in board games and wanting to play. And especially the more indie, smaller game companies are really seeing a boom, I think.
I agree, because like you look at it, there's people that are talking about getting together for D&D that I would have never expected. Getting together to play any kind of tabletop game, let alone a tabletop RPG that requires commitment and stuff. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And it is important. Like when you look at it, the way the world has been going lately, it's so important to just take the time to just spend time with people, because you never know, like, oh, hey, they got quarantined for 10 days and stuff like that. So as an indie company, like, how did you guys actually like keep the creative juices flowing through COVID and stuff like that? And how have you guys actually been able to successfully market the game after COVID as well? So
marketing is a difficult thing. Obviously social media is like a big, huge thing. And if you don't, I'm the one who's running the Instagram for Game of Ham. We do a lot of the social media stuff, but honestly, it's a full-time job, right? If you don't post every day and you don't post 3 reels a day, you're not going to get the exposure that you want to do. So I'm pretty much lazy about it. I know, but it's a lot of work. You have to come up with the content. You have to create, whole marketing, schedule of what you want to post and when, what time to post, what hashtag, and that kind of stuff. So it's difficult, but we've been starting to do getting more followers at conventions by incentivizing people to follow us for, free stickers, or, you get.
We even got a celebrity to do that.
Oh.
Most for embarrassing. Okay, what was that? What's the show he's from?
No, we're not going to mention specific names.
Okay.
But we don't know celebrities, so I just talked to this person like they were anybody else. And it started off.
And he's like, I'm a guest here.
Yeah.
I'm like, who are you? He's like, oh, I'm the main character of the show. And I'm like,
it was actually a reasonably big show.
Yeah.
And can you say the show?
Well,
I'm very intrigued.
After.
We can say
after.
But basically, we went from would you trade us a game for a photo op to liking, connecting with us on social media?
So he says, I'm happy to do like a photo with you guys if I can have the game for free. and George is like, you can have a free sticker if you follow us on social media. The boldness of that statement to a celebrity, right?
Listen, some people are not okay with negotiating.
No, but he was super cool about it. He
he was such a sweet guy.
He was so sweet.
He was sweet.
I love it.
And then we did the whole back and forth on Instagram, which was kind of fun because
we became pseudo friends on
crush.
Instagram.
We had no clue who he was, right? And we're like, oh my god, we met our celebrity crush. We took a photo and all that. And he's like, yeah, right. You guys are annoying, right? But marketing, social media is rough. But during COVID, not much happened since a lot of people. I mean, board games did really, really well during COVID. But since it was a party game and parties weren't happening, and
not even
large gatherings,
it wasn't just the party game aspect; it's also the adult party game because the only people you're playing with are your kids.
Is, like, large gatherings were able to happen, and nobody.
Party games happen with kids.
No,
it's just
but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Adult party games.
Yeah. We had two strikes.
Yeah. So that was a little rough. But then thankfully a convention started to happen again, and we said, I was in graduate school during COVID. He was finishing his, job, and he said, fuck it, we're gonna do this convention circus, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna graduate in unemployment, so let's go.
Well, it was like with all due respect, the people I worked with were nice, everything about the work environment was nice, but there's something to be said about, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term Kafkaesque existence, but it's just like this bureaucratic just bullshit of inefficiencies and whatnot. And for me, it's like, do your work and then move on. And you come 10 minutes early to work. You leave 10 minutes early to work if it comes down to it. But the important thing is you do your best and you get work done. And for me, just 9 to 5, the psychology of it just didn't agree with me. Because if you're like a salary employee, for example, you're expected to come. You could come 10 minutes early. That's perfectly fine. But if you leave 10 minutes early, game over. And then you're also expected to stay like a half hour late somewhat regularly. And it's just like, this is the stupidest practice possible. This is just my feeling on it.
No, you're not alone.
I think a lot of people mirror that.
There's a reason we're doing content creation. Like we're trying to get out of that 9 to 5 shit too.
And that's the thing. You gotta. And for me, I was still hoping to do conventions again. This was something I always hoped to do because I knew that would work because it was working on the one big show we got done. We got 2 little shows. And when I say little, I mean maybe 200 people showed, which is why. This is why, and we traveled like 3 hours for it, and the hotel costs alone cost more than it was even worth being there. Which is why we're like, screw this. If it's not at least a certain number of people, we don't want to bother. But then an opportunity struck where I started doing a map quest of different conventions that were one weekend after the next to see distances with a max of 8-hour distance between. And just like that, I went from driving a Honda Fit to within 3 weeks owning a Ford F-250 pickup truck.
Keep in mind, we both are over 6 feet. I'm 6'2" and he's 6'3".
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Honda Fit, it's
I think that one messed up my ankle permanently.
A clown car.
Thing.
Oh, my gosh. I can't imagine. I'm 5'2", so
see,
I can fit in anything.
I was going to say, I'm 6'1", so I drive a Ford Escape. She drives a Hyundai Sonata.
Yeah.
And every time I get out of driving her car, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you right now, Honda Fit might be a little bit small if you're above 5'9".
Yeah.
But I was driving the Honda Fit. That was my vehicle for about for 10 years. Anyway, so I was driving that thing for a long time, and I went to not only driving a Ford F-250 and owning one of those, but also owning a 26-foot tow behind trailer, which I had never driven anything like this before in my life.
Yeah.
And
you're like cross-country road trip.
Cross-country road trip. We did 2 installments of it, where we did the whole circuit from where did we go? It was DC to Columbus to Dallas to Denver to Chicago, back to Connecticut.
Wow.
Seattle.
Wow.
Then we did the second installment, which was the whole West Coast thing. And I got to say, Utah is one hell of a place. I want to go back there because the people there are, it's like this tight-knit community of what's essentially a large population.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you this right now, unless you go, it feels different than anywhere else because you could see these people got isolated and you feel like you're seeing a subculture emerge here from people who were isolated for a long period of time. I don't know if that makes sense.
It
does.
From
a sociology standpoint, it's one of the most fascinating places I've been. Not just that, but going somewhere where you just see salt for miles and miles.
All of the U.S. I'm not from the U.S. I'm from Germany, right? I was born here, so I've been in the U.S. for 10 years, and during this whole cross-country road trip, it's crazy how much there is in just one country.
Yeah, like
that in the state of Iowa is corn.
Yeah,
like home to me. So,
like that's true. We have such a huge country. It could be several countries. We have so many different cultures. I'm sure it's fascinating just to experience.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad that Game of Ham gave both of us the opportunity to see the country. Not many people have the freedom and the opportunity to do that. So I'm really, really grateful and thankful that we're able to do that.
As exhausting as it is, because I'll tell you right now, when you work a convention, like as a regular vendor, you're tired. But when you do what we do, which is more in your face, asking questions, talking to people, engaging back to back, because you see a Funko Pop, you don't really have to go much more than this is the price.
Right.
You see an art piece, you don't really have to say much except the price. You got to give a whole spiel, which is especially appropriate. But you have to do a song and dance. So like the Monday after a show, if the show ends on a Sunday, I like to call the hangover day, where you just take life and sort of reflect on everything.
Yeah.
But even with all that exhaustion, you still get to have such an adventure, and you could go basically anywhere. I mean, our convention list with just big shows and this doesn't include some shows where it's like they just jump around each year, so we don't actually have them on the list because it's not a stationary place. Is like 250. So there's something to do any given point anywhere in the country, including Hawaii. Which
that's amazing.
But even when you end up getting a situation like this last year, we were going to do a show where we actually won an award, which was really cool. We got Best Indie Game Award at a show called Too Many Games. And then the following year, we got waitlisted, and we're like, we won first place in your thing. How do we get waitlisted? By a jurying process. It's not like we waited too long to get to apply when we were supposed to. It's a jurying process. So we got waitlisted, and we found out like 3 weeks before it was supposed to happen. And one thing to know about shows is for the bigger ones, if you don't book months in advance, you're not getting in.
Yeah.
I mean, to give you an idea, a show like Katsucon, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, big show in Maryland. Basically, their application ended October 31st. If you didn't apply by October 31st for a show that is not until even February, the end of February, you're locked out. You're not even getting it. So this is kind of what you got to know. So 3 weeks notice is what we got, that we were not able to get in. And we were going to be going down to, where was it? Atlanta?
Florida.
No, it was DC. We were doing Awesome Con. So we were in DC. And we were originally going to go from DC to Pennsylvania and then go down to Miami, which is a nice drive, a nice 16-hour drive.
Yeah.
So
it's so fun, right?
Oh yeah. So Miami's not really a place that excited me at all, but we're like, you know what? We're rejected from this. We have nothing else to do. Let's cry our tears out on the beaches of Miami.
Hell yeah.
Spent 2 weeks in Miami. And I got to say, aside from even the beaches, it was like, because of all the tourists, there was just garbage in the water. I got to say, Miami has this idea in your head of what to expect. But then you go to the Everglades. That's kind of cool in a commercial sort of way. You go to the actual place in Miami, and I'm not a nightlife person. Maybe that's part of the problem.
We went in the downtime. Like we went in June. Like nobody in the summer goes to Miami. In the winter, it's when the time you go to Florida because it's nice and warm.
But man, oh man, I enjoy that snorkeling. And it was probably the least exciting thing for anyone else. But I got one of those like giant face masks with a little tube on your head, the really dorky looking ones.
Yes.
I was living my best life.
He was so sunburned because he would spend like hours just floating in the water looking at fish in his whole back. It's like I was just sitting on the beach and I'm like, okay, I give him another hour.
That was a wild story. I mean, I'll sort of digress here. I mean, this is probably not all relevant, but the fish in Florida, there's this one species, and I already forgot their name, but they like go to humans and just use them as cover. So it's like, remorates, or whatever, the remora, things talking in Pokemon terms.
I was going to say Remoraid. I thought was a Pokemon.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's like, I guess that concept for these fish. So you just have like 100 of these fish just going up to you, and for whatever reason, they would just whack you with their tail. So they just keep hitting you. That was truly bizarre, and she didn't give a shit. She's just sunbathing. But for me, I'm like having the most...
like a 5-year-old. Like, they're touching me. I'm like, good.
And some of these guys got to be pretty big too. It wasn't like just tiny little fish. Some of them were pretty big.
Yeah.
So I was living my best life, and it became a challenge of how not to get sunburned. I'm Greek, and I have very dark complexion. I don't know if it really shows here, so I don't really get sunburned. But man, oh man, it became a challenge of how not to get sunburned because I would put the sunscreen on.
They have sharks. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was cool.
So he's just floating, looking at this little fish, and kids are screaming, running out of the water. It's like, shark, shark, shark. Keeps floating.
He's like, oh yeah, I see it.
Not really danger.
But to be fair, you see a 6-foot nourishing shark. You see this giant black thing floating in the water. It does sort of get.
But he didn't care less. He's like, I saw a stingray. Let me go after it. And I'm like, please don't.
And I learned how many stingrays there were.
That's not the Steve Irwin thing.
But that's kind of the cool thing about doing the convention circuits. You get to have these experiences that you otherwise wouldn't. You talk to so many people, and you're so stimulated all the time.
Yeah.
Granted, don't get me wrong. There are some boring shows, and I won't mention specific shows.
Yeah.
But there was one show in particular where us vendors will, if we know the show is kind of lame, and this is a nice thing too, because I guess it's our marketing tactic, but we've been finding success at even shows where a lot of people have been saying this show sucks. But for us, it's like it still hit the marker for a perfectly good show.
The engagement I feel like probably makes a big difference.
But there was one of these shows that was so boring, and and for whatever reason, we just keep getting more and more shit that keeps coming to our booth as mascots, and this was one of the first things.
It's people giving us stuff.
Yeah, we just keep getting shits that become mascots.
Or dick related.
Which was actually the first thing, and we're thinking about. Well, we'll get to that, but where it was just so boring. Our neighbor just had this bag of mini dicks, like little dicks, little squishy dicks. So they just started throwing them in the air and letting them rain dicks in this otherwise super boring convention. So that's how we got our mascot, Dickie, who now is we got a little cage for our con exclusive expansions. So he sits on You saw Dickie,
Yes, we did.
So you know who
he's
Dickie
a little
is.
hairy now.
To be fair, he came that way.
It's a little rough,
we're actually looking into maybe getting those. So whenever someone buys like we call the con exclusive bundle deals combo platters because I mean, I love my food puns.
I can't with him.
But yeah, we're thinking about even getting one of those just to give to people whenever they buy it. So.
We do get a lot of inquiries of how much does the dick cost. I'm like, this stuff
no, he's ours.
Yeah.
And we have to hide it because I'm paranoid someone's going to steal Dickie. And then there's this one 5-year-old girl who just picked up Dickie because what else do kids do except pick them up?
Yep.
And
just squishing it
and just playing around with it, saying, "What is this?" And we told her it was a mushroom. And
that's the only way. That's the only way to say that.
Really?
She said, "This isn't a mushroom. What is it really?" And we left that one for Dad.
Too expensive.
But no, we just keep getting these random shit things, and now our booth is just we have a little pig plush toy, and we have a horse dick because someone thought, hey, getting a mini dick isn't enough. Now you need a horse dick. So now we have 2 dicks part of the case. But so convention life is interesting, for sure. And the vendor side of it is a totally different experience, obviously, from the attendee side.
Yeah.
But for us, we see it all, and it's just like war stories.
But it's a fun community because you see a lot of these vendors and do a lot of the same shows, so you kind of like traveling circus with the same people.
It's like coworkers.
Fun,
It's like having coworkers, except without the shit. Is this going to get back to the boss, and I'm going to get fired aspect?
Right. Yeah. No, that
That's a good way to put it, because like I never really, it's not something that you ever really think about when it comes down to the convention circuit. Is like, I'm sure you guys are seeing the same celebrities, the same Funko Pop distributors, the same comic book distributors, the same artists. Like if they're a Northeast artist, you're seeing them at Rhode Island, you're seeing them at New York, you're seeing
the local guys, and then you see the national guys. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We've sort of dabbled in both circles because, well, at this point we go everywhere. I mean, we do obviously obviously all the stuff in the Northeast that is big and notable. If you've heard of a big show, we probably do it. But then we also do shows out on the West Coast and shows in Texas area and whatnot. So you end up seeing people who hit those areas. Mm-hmm. And each one has their own regional thing. The Midwest, a lot of the vendors there who are local will go from Chicago down to Indianapolis to maybe Ohio furthest. But it's kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
And making friends with all of them.
I was going to say it almost becomes like a family, I would imagine, for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, when you travel so much, good luck with a social life. And for us, we did the circuit last year where we didn't come back for a long time. But this time, we were going to change gears and do things more local because Laura was going to get a position. So, because she has a passion in psychology, speaking of.
Okay.
There you go.
So we
ended up. That's what I graduate with.
Yeah.
Right.
So unemployment because everyone's psychology.
So we ended up doing a lot more driving back and forth instead of doing the whole circuit. But you end up, even with that there, you're on the road maybe 14 hours every Thursday and then put in that drive on Sunday to come back home. But it leaves you maybe like a Tuesday or Wednesday, but who the fuck's around of your friends who's around on a Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah.
It's almost like working night shift.
Yeah. So having a social life is tough, especially when you're doing 35 shows a year. And next year, we're probably going to be upping that number even higher.
Right.
She's like, no. Wow. She's begging. She's like, please, no.
I want to stay home.
Hey, right now, it's just about spreading the good word. You know, letting people bring home that bacon every weekend.
People.
There you go.
That.
But it's
I was
also
going to say, start a ham Bible.
Oh, actually, fun thing of,
you know what?
Board Game Geek. When I was very bored, I came up with a whole parody religion about ham versus chicken.
Hamology is what you call it.
Hammonites and hamology.
Love it.
So that actually became our big box description, that with a little chat GPT in there. So you gotta have some fun. And it's really cool too as you evolve as a brand, where you end up starting to get super fans, which is really cool. I mean, we have one super fan who every time he goes to, what is it, Chili's?
Yeah.
Whenever he goes to Chili's, they have this survey at the end, and he just made it his ritual now to send us a screenshot of him saying "play game of ham" on their survey.
Shout out to Charlie. He is has a special heart in my place.
Yeah, he was our first super fan.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
love that.
Yeah. I hope we get a super fan like that.
No, we need a Charlie.
I feel like that's my mom.
Yes.
I think my mom is our Charlie.
Yeah, I think so.
There you go.
I love that. I love mom.
I mean, that's something too. I mean, I don't know if you guys do conventions, but there's a lot of press things that you guys might want to consider doing too.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny you say that because like we just started this. This is now our third or fourth podcast that we've dived into.
Yeah. So we started off not doing this concept. We started Casually Die Hard as a wrestling podcast.
Pro wrestling podcast.
Oh. He's a former indie pro wrestler and is super into it. So we were sort of doing like reviews of shows and just sort of talking about the industry and things like that. And then we were just kind of like, I don't want to be like constricted to like one thing. And we've always been really interested in learning people's stories and hearing about how people do what they do and why. So we started doing it this way. And so we definitely will be looking into
press credentials,
more press things.
Is Casually Die Hard related to the Die Hard movies at all?
No.
Because my second question would have been,
my mind went to board games actually, but
no. But my second question, think Die Hard. If you ever seen a movie, do you think it's a Christmas movie?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Absolutely, 100% a Christmas movie.
Suck it. Okay?
Technicality.
Suck it.
By technicality.
You know what? On that note, I'm starting a new petition as well. Batman Returns is a Christmas movie. It takes place on Christmas night, and it's all centered around saving the day on Christmas night.
I never saw it that way. You know what? This is no. You know what?
I mean, if you're going to call Die Hard a Christmas movie, then that obviously is, but
Easily.
by technicality. And it's funny because someone actually was walking around with a petition about is Die Hard a Christmas movie at one of the conventions. Was it? Okay.
I love that.
It's a real topic starter.
The majority agrees.
It is.
I was gonna say there's a lot of people that don't, but the majority do think it is a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
So pro indie wrestler. That's really interesting. We're in Stamford, Connecticut, so we have WWE right in the front door.
We're right in the northwest corner of Connecticut. So no, trust me, I have applied multiple times to work for for the WWE.
And I never heard back. In fact, one time I even went
neither.
My resume. I went to their door with my resume, and they wouldn't even let me in to give my resume.
Oh no!
Oh no! See, I haven't done that yet, but I have. This is kind of my gateway. Like, this is my gateway of like, if I can make it here, maybe, just maybe, at some point, they'll invite me to be on one of those kickoff panels. And boy,
you become friends with the wrestlers that go to these conventions, like
Luger, exactly,
Matt Hardy.
Who's the guy? That damn all the time.
Ron Simmons.
There we go. He was our neighbor at New York Comic Con.
He's my best friend. We're
that poor man. Now. That poor man. All fucking weekend, he was our neighbor. So all fucking weekend, you just get these very people who think they're very original, who in the blue just say, "Damn." All fucking weekend.
Another
one.
Like
that is my thing.
I was gonna say, I guarantee they don't even do it right because you got to get a nice deep bait. Damn.
No, they didn't get that right then.
No,
I don't think there was a single person. Well, actually, no, there were a couple who got it right.
Yeah.
But no, majority of them did not.
But you can see how
they all felt
in
original.
His face, you're like,
And the funny thing is like, just a fun fact in case you guys want to know or not. Fun fact about Ron is that he's actually credited as the first African American world champion.
Yeah, I did actually know that. I think
was
it you that told me because he said it or no. One of our vendor friends said that actually. And before this show, I didn't know who he was. So you learn something new.
Yeah, like he's so integral in the pro wrestling industry, and all people know him now as is the damn guy.
Yeah. That's the issue with having a gimmick.
Yeah,
like,
listen,
you've leaned too hard into it. That's all people know.
A shirt and hat that said "damn," so he wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, that's made him a lot of money too.
Exactly.
So.
Selling merch there, wasn't he?
He was.
And people were going damn all weekend, so it really does.
Yeah.
You hear the same shit. I mean,
but $1 million man, or what was one?
$1 Million Man Ted DiBiase.
Yep.
I don't know.
He knows it all.
I don't know what the arrangement was, but our neighbors for New York Comic Con, it was like cycling different wrestlers the whole weekend, with Matt Hardy, I guess, being the big one, and some of the other Hardy boys. Cool. Which, mind you, I don't know anything about this stuff, so everyone
I know everything.
Like mom had a crush on him. Like, I don't know who that is.
I looked up photos. He looks a lot different now.
What?
A lot.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Still,
but our friends were starstruck by Matt Hardy and whatnot, and we're like, I don't know who that is. Frankly, I could have probably sold to celebrities and not known I've sold to celebrities. I'm that bad with pop culture.
That's what happened with Shaggy. He's haunting me in my dreams. What's his name?
Matthew Lillard.
Matthew Lillard.
Oh, I love him.
I love him too.
I don't think he likes me. If you're watching this, I'm sorry. Forgive me, please.
I don't think he dislikes you. I think he was just done with people.
It was just really awkward. I was running a show by myself because he had 103 fever. How dare you? So I was by myself in Oaks, Pennsylvania, at a horror show.
Yep.
More known for Scream.
And I didn't recognize him because I don't watch horror movies. So I'm like out of place there.
You knew him as Shaggy.
So he walked by and he's like, he looks vaguely familiar, but he was looking at stuff and I'm like, oh, this is all safe stuff. And he's like, okay, walking. And then someone else walks by and he's like, oh my God, that's Matthew Lillard. And I'm like, who?
Who?
He's like, Scream? I'm like, no. And he's like, what the hell are you doing here? And I'm like, what else was he? And he's like, he's Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. And I'm like, oh, now I know what he's talking about. And then the next day, he walks by our booth again, and I take it upon myself to approach him and say, I'm so sorry I didn't recognize you yesterday, which did not help my case at all. And he's like, and keeps walking. Fair.
I don't think that means he dislikes you. I think he just was not into engaging.
I think.
Yeah, I would feel the same way though.
Instagram, I get commercials from Matthew all over the place.
And funny enough, he's running a board game Kickstarter that just finished for a Dungeons and Dragons type game, which is the type of person who would not like a party game.
Well, because he actually just came out with D&D inspired alcohol.
Yeah.
Oh, so he's got something else. It was something Bards and Grimm or something.
Yeah,
rings a bell.
Yeah, so he has
art on Facebook and Instagram.
See, he hasn't come across mine.
No, so mine either.
I'm sure he will. Facebook's listening.
He's all over my feed, so
yeah.
Sounds like something I would be very into. I feel like the algorithm is slacking.
Well, to wrap it up,
he dislikes you.
No, I know I'm being dramatic, but it was. I felt hurt. And then I felt bad because I'm like, I didn't recognize who he is, and who am I to tell him that I didn't recognize him? It's like he doesn't care.
Yeah.
To wrap up here, I know this is kind of a question that we both kind of were like, oh, that's a fun one to end on, and it's, what is your all-time favorite board game? As our last question, winding down.
I have an answer.
Go for it.
Easy. Labyrinth.
Oh.
Labyrinth.
I haven't played that one.
I haven't either.
If you're a 5-year-old child, this is smacks.
It's basically
like everything a 5-year-old likes: chicken nuggets, fries, Labyrinth, Uno. Sign me up.
It's a tile game where basically the labyrinth moves because each piece is a connecting labyrinth.
You have to
L or straight
items.
Line or X, and as you move the tile, it either connects or shuts off, and you have to collect different things. It's a very smartly made game. It's very cerebral.
Thank you.
But I mean,
it's a German game.
Yeah,
okay.
It's one of those games that I feel like it's cool in concept, but then actually playing.
Wow.
You guys
are a hater.
For me, I don't know if I could say I have a favorite. I went through a period of time where I liked this. I like deck builders. I liked Dominion for a while. I liked DC Deck Builder game. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
I've meant to pick it up, but it's so hard because if I get into the deck builder genre, I'll just fall right back into Magic, and I cannot financially afford that.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess you could say Magic was my favorite. And for me, I like to do this thing. So I feel like Magic, it's one of those pay to win if you want to play competitively. It just is. You either get the standard best of the best of a certain type of deck, whatever it is, and you spend hundreds of dollars, maybe a down payment for a nice Black Lotus or whatever.
Yeah.
Which isn't even tournament legal, I think.
Not anymore.
Yeah, unless you're playing Legacy. But when it comes to that, for me, I found it fun because for me, I never really cared about winning. So
he likes trolling people.
I enjoy the trolling aspect.
Yeah.
So you're a blue-white deck.
I actually, yes, one of my favorite decks was blue-white.
It's like
that and my dad my dad is the guy who I play the most with. I call him the Elf Lord because he liked to do mono green elf token deck.
It's just funny because his dad doesn't play with actual cards. He plays with paper printouts of the card.
Even though he actually owns some of them too. He just likes the paper printout more.
What? How does that work?
He just prints it out and puts in the sleeve.
Yeah, in the sleeve ahead of like a stalker card. Like one of the tokens that we got.
That's cheating. That's cheating.
And he would get all the, I don't know if you know all the expensive cards, but something like Gaia's Cradle, which is
it's like $200,000 to get a first edition of Gaia's Cradle.
So
it's insane.
Well, he has one printed out on paper.
He has multiple. And Craterhoof Behemoth is how he finishes. I don't know if you know
that one. I'm not familiar with.
Well, he basically creates a shit ton of tokens, and then creates Craterhoof basically gives all of them XX, where it's the number of creatures in play with trample. And for him, he likes to finish all at once. So for me, another thing I enjoyed doing was like black control with elimination by basically assassinating and lifelink and death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. And then I did Reanimator.
This is such a niche conversation for you.
Yes. Well, I ended up going Reanimator when he annoyed me enough. But anyway, that's sort of digressing. I guess you could say Magic was a favorite of mine. I played that so much for a long time.
That's a card game, not a board game.
But I've been out of Magic since I continued playing, but I think I stopped after Phyrexia, so it's been a really long time.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I think I made it up to M10 or something, or maybe a little beyond that.
I don't even know the legacy that I was playing at, like the era. I just know that I stopped at 2013.
That's actually about exactly where I stopped. So,
okay, so we were about the same area then.
Yeah.
I played for like 2 years, and then I was like, I have spent like $3,000 on cards.
Oh yeah, we had friends who did that too. They would just drop so much money. My cousin plays the game competitively, and he actually went to Star City and got in the top 500, I think, which sounds unimpressive until you realize just how many people were involved there.
So many.
And that's actually a pretty good ranking. But he also, you could pay for a house with the cards he has.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know I've had a blast talking to you guys, and it makes me want to dig out the game and play it with our friends this weekend. We'll figure out somebody to hang out with.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing your story, sharing the game of Ham and hamming it up with us. You can find all of their socials on the screen, as well as gameofham.com. You can connect, you can buy, all that kind of stuff there. You can check them out at all the conventions next year. This unfortunately comes out after PAX Unplugged. But thank you guys so much. And for George, for Laura, I'm Damien.
And I'm Ashley.
And this has been Casually Die Hard. Bye.